It's great to meet you. I thought it was interesting, when you reached out. My wife is Australian. She's
Oh,
from
no
Sydney, so
way.
there's a great music tradition in Australia as well. I'm also just kind of fascinated by like how do people look at AI in different countries? There's so many similarities, I think, culturally between the US and Australia, but obviously a lot of big differences. So you have this new decision, which I guess is not a final Supreme Court decision, right? I mean, this could still change, but
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a court decision because it's a legislative decision of
legislate, right,
Australia. Yeah, because we don't have a fair
right.
use exception. So there is literally nothing to rely on in our Copyright Act if you want to train for AI without permission.
Gotcha. And so basically, so your view is like this doesn't actually even have to go to court. Like this is, you know, basically you've decided, the legislators have decided you can't train on, you can't train an AI model on, music that's sort of publicly available and argue that it's not, that you don't have to pay anything because, whatever. It's like a
Yeah,
person listening to music or something would be the legal argument.
that's pretty right. So if you wanted to train something on AI for AI in Australia that was copyright protected, there isn't an exception. There isn't any kind of provision in the Copyright Act that would allow you to do that, and that's pretty clear. So it's not like in the US, I guess, where the limits of fair use are, being tested right now with what, 43, 53, 54, I don't, can't keep up, however many cases there are, working out what is and isn't infringement. So here it was the question for the government was, should we change the Copyright Act to allow free copying for AI training purposes? And the answer to that part of the question was, no, we shouldn't. The next part of the question is, okay, what framework, do we need to change our current framework to make it easier to train for AI? So that's the bit we're in now. But the big decision was really, we're not going to introduce a new exception to allow free access to copyright material without permission and without any payment at all.
And how do you think this is going to go from here? Do you think that this will now AI companies that want to use, or want to use either Australian music or, operate, have their technology be used in Australia? Do you think they will then, start making deals like licensing deals with the record companies? Is that where we go from here?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're seeing it already happening, and a lot of the deals that involve Australian music are global deals. So, for example, the Universal deal with Udio will cover a lot of Australian music. Um, and I presume, not that I know the details of it, but I'm assuming that it would cover, the ability to use music in this market as well. So, that's already happening. A lot of artists are using AI. I mean, music and technology are so adjacent
Hmm.
as sectors for many reasons, like not just because obviously technology facilitates access to music. Um, you use it in the creation of music, but also both of our industries are founded on intellectual property laws. Without intellectual property laws, we wouldn't have business models, either of us. So I feel like it makes sense that when we're working together to explore what AI can do for music, that we kind of do it under the commercial and legal framework that we've always worked within.
And the music industry has this, I think, history of, I think with like sampling and things like that, where you sort of get paid for your music being used, or portions, like even small portions of it being used, right down the road. So there's almost like a framework already for this, where it's like, okay, if you're creating music using AI and it's drawing on certain training data, you could get paid for it. But then there's also like a technical, and I know you're not an AI researcher here, but like, is there a way to, do you think there will be sort of a way to like to figure out? So like, okay, some artist comes out with a new album, what percentage of that is comes from
Yeah.
other artists and the training data and how to compensate them?
Yeah. I mean, the technology is amazing. Like, there's no denying that technology is developing at such an incredible rate, and AI is just incredible, really, kind of mind blowing. Um, it makes total logical sense that we could come up with technology that can track and trace, you know, a bit better than we already do, where bits of songs or bits of recordings are used. And, companies are already developing those tools. So um, I think is it SoundCloud, the company that a couple of the majors have invested in to help trace uses of music for AI. And, technology will solve the problem. Like that's what tech does. It finds problems and it solves them. So, it makes sense to me that that will get better and better. Um, but the first thing we need to sort out is this kind of fundamental issue of, can you take music and just use it for training without permission or payment? In Australia, we've kind of said no to the first part of that question. You can't take it without any kind of payment. This debate's happening around the world, and I know this decision here is reverberating. So I feel like that's a good thing.
Yeah, there's sort of an opportunity here to be, because it is I think the first in the world, right? Is that it's the first sort of
Yeah.
decision that kind of definitively,
Yes. It's the first
yeah,
kind of hard no, I guess.
right,
Um,
right.
so the UK, they're looking at this discussion. We have very similar copyright laws to the UK, and in fact, we have very similar copyright laws to the US, apart from the fair use exception. So yeah, I think a lot of people will be looking at this decision and saying, the government in Australia stood up. And actually, when you interrogate a lot of the arguments that are being put by the other side, it's very easy and very quick to kind of dismantle them and just go, guys, come on, you know how to license music. We're doing it with you on so many other platforms already. Can we just like stop the silliness and get on with this?
Well, music is, yeah, it's an interesting one because when you look at like other types of art, or really, or I don't know, like language, if you will, like it's hard really to say, okay, this is like a, the out. It's hard to look at the output and say, oh, this is clearly a derivative of this. Whereas in music, like you kind of can, like there's just little, each little sound kind of like had to come from somewhere, and so there is, like, I actually remember, like, even another famous Australian music copyright song, the Kookaburra song.
But
Remember
yes,
that case?
flat down under, yep, men at work.
Right. It's like this little riff that was, that came from that song, and then they lost that. Right. Eventually, the creator of the Kookaburra song won and was able to collect. You know,
Collected.
right.
Collected. Mm-hmm.
Because you could argue that, like, well, these are like human. I mean, this is the argument from the other side, as you said, like these are like people. Like, people listen to music and then they create original music, but they were inspired by what they listened
Totally.
to. You
Yeah,
know,
copyright is not about stopping evolution of music. It's not about protecting ideas. Like it is specifically not about protecting ideas. It's about protecting the embodiment of some of that. And it definitely allows you to build on. But we face all these cases already. There are so many cases where an artist will say another artist has taken a part of their song and it goes to court and, there's a detailed discussion. It's not black and white. But that's not what the tech companies are saying. They're not saying, I hear this argument, if you walk into a gallery and you see all the beautiful art, as a human, you take all of that in and then you go and create a painting, then you're inspired by the art you've seen. And that's exactly the same as training for AI. It is completely not the same. I don't know about you, but when I walk in and look at a painting, I don't instantly memorize not just the painting in front of me, but all the other paintings in the gallery and then be able to reproduce them perfectly instantly. That is not the same thing. Being inspired by something is very different to copying, very specifically copying something and then reproducing it, even if it's sort of, in a slightly different form. But yeah, I mean, all of those concepts of copyright, we're going to be testing them ongoing, but that's not what this is about.
well, I mean, no, no, none of them were arguing that they have the right to then output something that is, a copy of that painting. So there's that. I mean, I think what's another interesting thing is, like, there you could argue that that they're outputting something original, but I think the more we learn about this technology, the more we know, like, that's not really possible. Like, some fragment of that is not going to be original.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
There's kind of two parts to it. There's the input and the output side. So this decision in Australia is purely about the input side. What can you copy to put into the machines? And I say machines, it makes me sound like I have no, not a techie person. I just use it because it's easy for people to understand.
Yeah,
And a big
they are
part of their
machines
job,
in a sense. I
yeah,
mean,
they are machines.
yeah,
Like it's hard to break all this down. It's complicated. But then on the other side, you've got the outputs, and whether or not there is copyright protection for purely generated AI work, that's a question. At the moment, no, because you have to work out where the human element is. There has to be a human element. We look at that, we're facing that issue with our charts. So ARIA does the Australian music charts. What tracks should be eligible to be in the charts? What tracks should be eligible to be paid royalties under like collective licensing, for example, when people play music in bars and such? Should those purely generated AI tracks get um, royalties? Are they even protected by copyright? At the moment, no. Is that correct? That's a discussion we're going to have in Australia as well as everywhere. But on the input side, that's the side where the argument's really been we need access to music and text and everything at such a scale that there's no way to do it without giving us free access because we can't license. It's too hard. It's too slow. And I think people have called that out and said that's just not true.
yeah.
Licensing frameworks exist. You can do it.
If you look at the history of music too, you mentioned technology and the music industry they're so intertwined. I mean, you had the MP3 that came out in the 90s, and all of a sudden, you could just download any album in the world for free.
Yeah.
And that obviously was not right.
Yeah.
But it sort of led to this. I mean, ultimately, the music industry won in court, but but it led to this like new business model, right? With Apple and iTunes and the 99-cent song. It kind of broke the record industry. What had sort of made the record industry so big and powerful and lucrative, kind of broke that, right? And now you see that like, broken again with like, I mean, I don't know if I'd say broken, but like, the Spotify, the streaming model has sort of again, forced the music industry to completely change its business model. And I wonder if there's like lessons that we can learn from those
Yeah.
two revolutions, and sort of like now that you have this legislative decision, now we have to make these deals.
Yeah.
Like, what can we learn from the past?
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, so many lessons learned from, when the internet was kind of invented, I guess, or became a mainstream consumer. And I was just starting working when that happened. So I was, working in copyright when we were like, oh my God, what do we do? And many people were sort of saying information wants to be free. We may have seen that. Um,
Yeah, I was a kid then, and I, would I couldn't, I could afford to maybe buy like a CD
yeah,
every month or 6 weeks or
CDs were
something,
expensive.
and
They were
yeah, they're
expensive.
really expensive. So it was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. But at the same time, you knew it was wrong. You knew it was wrong, but it was
Totally did. And that's the
right.
discussion we're having. Like, it would, if we left that to run free, there would be no music industry now because there would have been nobody making any money. The business model was completely smashed. Did the music industry react in the right way? Probably not. Suing your fans, probably not a great idea, but I definitely think you can see, even from some of the deals that have been announced, that that lesson has been learned. You can't stop the march of technology. And do you want to? Because, these are new business models. They have really evolved. Like for a consumer, being able to have all the music in the world in the palm of your hand is a wonderful thing, and people are willing to pay for it. Um, so I guess it's about weighing up, all of these things are about weighing up where's the public benefit, what are the business models. And sure, consumers would love everything for free, but that doesn't mean that it's a good thing or that it's, that's the public benefit we're trying to achieve. But yeah, the music industry absolutely has learned lessons and will continue to, and digital disruption will continue, whatever the next thing is. Um, but I think the reaction this time has been much more considered, measured, and strategic.
We've already seen some of these AI created songs, as you mentioned, like become somewhat popular, or get a lot of plays on some of the streaming services, right? So I guess like if you think about it, well, you could do a thought experiment. You could be like, okay, well, let's say, sorry, let's say, it's possible to just create, you know, music that people want to listen to, and that becomes sort of, let's say, like all music became AI created, right? You end up
Yeah.
with like, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. But just like a thought experiment, so you're like, all music's AI created now. I guess like all the artists who helped train that would sort of continue to get paid in whatever kind of system we create for compensation. But you'd have like no new human
Oh my God.
music creation, right? Which is not a world we want to live in. But you have to find like there. I guess the question is like, it makes you think like, how do you have to create a system where it's lucrative enough to compensate, to make it worth it for new musicians to come in and like want to devote their life to this, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And that was one of the things we were really strong on with our government here, because if there's no incentive to continue to create, no one will create because you can't afford to live. And so AI will just be training itself on all the existing music and then all of the music it's making, which is just going to end up, slop or whatever, whatever you want to call it. So you have to get that balance right. And the free access part means that balance is not right. Um, I don't know. I mean, when I first saw Sora 2, my instinctive reaction was, I just don't want to, I want to go to a platform that's no AI, and obviously that's just a gut reaction, but it feels, I don't know, it feels maybe it's a sugar hit, but you want that evolution of sound. I mean, even, like I think in the past week, Rosalia has put out a single, I don't know if you've heard it, called Bergain, which is so different from any kind of pop single that you probably have heard. And it's taking music into another place. And you need humans to be doing that.
yeah,
And the story behind it as well is just as important as the actual sound.
and I think everybody would agree with that. But then at the same time, you like there has to be you end up in this weird middle ground where it's like everyone agrees, yeah, I love that, but then if I'm just happy to listen to whatever whatever AI created thing on Spotify in the background, then it doesn't lead to the economics. Like, do we have to sort of figure out, is there some answer here?
I mean, I can only speak for music specifically. I mean, AI is such a huge topic, and the benefits of AI, what the really outstanding ones are obviously going to come across health, environment, efficiency, productivity, that sort of thing. Like, what do we really want it to do for music? What is the problem we're trying to solve in music? Um, it's an amazing tool to help artists, create in so many different ways, from technical stuff in recording to evolving songwriting to all of those sorts of things. That's cool. What do consumers want to do with it? Well, if you're not a music person and you can't make music, maybe you just want to be able to have play and make something that you've thought about, but it's never going to be released. Where does AI music fit into the commercial model? I mean, I don't know. Do we have to solve that? Isn't that a problem that the people who want to make money off that AI music have to solve? What we know how to do is create music that people want to listen to because they love the sound, because they love the artist, they love the story of the artist. And it is hard to break artists now. Like in Australia, it's very hard. We're competing with all the music from the US, all the music from the UK as an English speaking language, and it's been really tough. So you need to find those avenues that really connect. And ah, yes, there'll be people who listen to AI music on, background playlists or whatever, but that's not really the core audience. Young people, that's not going to be their core listening. It's like, oh my God, I heard this new amazing AI track. That might be a novelty, but yeah, I just go back to what is the consumer proposition? Why is it going to be such a great thing? Oh my God, guys, listen, we've got this amazing AI music. They'll be like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Marketing music is hard. Marketing AI music, I just think it's impossible. Very, very hard.
And obviously the AI can't go perform in concert, right? I mean, there's no,
Definitely cannot do
you know,
that. Well, I mean, humanoid robots, let's see, holograms. It's all cute, but like, will it replace people? I don't think so. I mean, unless humans become fundamentally different or become completely wired in different ways to how we are now, that connection from music with the, whether it's a new band that you've just discovered or I'm about to go and see Oasis on Friday, all of those amazing memories that you have from when you were young, you can't replace that, I don't think. I'm optimistic.
You have to be optimistic. Right. I mean, and I guess there's a question, like you mentioned, Australia, which has, I think, produced like, and I'm not just saying this because I'm married to an Australian, but like an inordinate amount of like per capita, great music. So you do sort of, there's a scenario where like, if the U.S. courts say, actually, no, this is fair use, maybe they keep some of the Australian musicians out of the training set, but then they can still come in and like disrupt the scene there.
Yeah.
Is that a concern at all?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a global issue, and jurisdiction is a real issue here in Australia. People sort of say all the training is happening overseas anyway, so what are you going to do about it? I think what we needed to focus on was just what our law says and what we allow. And, whatever happens in international markets. I know my colleagues in the US, the RIAA, and others are working really hard on this. Same with the UK with BPI. And I hope they get the outcomes. And, the settlements that are happening would indicate that these AI companies are not feeling that confident around how they're going in these cases. And the settlements, the one settlement of Anthropic was massive, let alone what that would have been if it was damages. So
Are you talking about the books one
yeah,
or the?
the
Yeah,
authors, the 1.5 billion USD settlement, I think biggest ever copyright
but that was
settlement.
where they were actually pirating
They were pirating,
the
true,
books for
but there hasn't
right.
been a case yet that said, yeah, actually, guys, it's fine for you to do this. And UDO's settled, obviously. We'll see what happens with the other one. Um, so it matters to us what we say in Australia, though, because, we can only set the law for our country. It's, you guys have different gun laws than us. That doesn't mean we've changed all our gun
No, we
laws to
do.
be the
I've
same as
noticed that.
yours. Yeah. And the other thing is like for us as well, we have a really important, and I know, there are different cultural issues in different markets, but our First Nations culture, our Indigenous culture is so important to protect. And there are huge cultural considerations here of being able to train on AI material, whether it's art or music, and then just be able to, I don't know, do whatever the AI app can do with it and spit out wildly inappropriate and offensive indigenous material. Like, it's like making a fake plastic boomerang that's got all the wrong drawings on it. Um, so we just have to look at what we do in our market, and I hope that what we've done gives, some perspective to other markets to say, actually, Australia's done it. It seems to be fine. We'll work it out. Licensing deals are happening. In fact, they're happening in the US more than anywhere where the law is,
Yeah,
arguably not settled. So,
yeah, it's a good point. When you talk with people, your counterparts in the U.S., like, do you think that there's a difference in how, I don't know, like Australians view AI versus Americans
I mean, the
in
US is
general?
obviously at the forefront because you have all the major companies in the States and always been such a powerhouse of tech innovation. Um, I think Australians, though, are early adopters of technology. I think we took up mobile phones quicker than perhaps most other countries in the world. We love it. Um, and we're pretty open-minded about stuff. So there's no anti-AI sentiment in Australia, broadly speaking, but I would say what there is, and I've seen quite a bit of research in the last few months. Australians are skeptical of, not on this particular issue, but they are skeptical and worried about the broader impacts of AI. They don't have great levels of trust for the big tech companies that are so powerful at the moment, and they're worried about their jobs. So, it is, and the environment. I think there's a really strong push in amongst young people of the environmental impacts of typing a prompt into ChatGPT. My kids are always like, don't use it. You're killing a forest every time you ask it something.
So they're not using it to do their homework then, I guess.
Well, and the schools and unis, like I was talking to my kids about this last night, they've introduced all these new measures to find the ChatGPT users. So the schools are really cracking down on it. we're all facing, like, AI is definitely going to embed itself across the economy, and all of these uses, and we all have to navigate how we take the good and try and guard against the bad. But yeah, we're like everywhere. People want to use it. It's cool. A lot of people, a lot of old people traveling, using it for travel planning, um, which is cool. But yeah, the US is a powerhouse. Aussies like using tech. We do have some great tech companies like Atlassian and Canva, both massive Australian companies. Um, and the government desperately is looking to ways to drive productivity. Um, but I don't think they felt that allowing music to be copied for AI training was going to be a huge productivity driver. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's a really interesting conversation. Thank you. Is there anything else I didn't ask about that you want to add?
No, I mean, it is a fascinating conversation. I mean, I've worked in copyright my whole career. And I love tech. You know, when I did my law degree, the internet just came in. I did one of the first ever IT law courses because I was just so fascinated with it, and I still am. And there is a way, there's absolutely a way to kind of navigate through all of this. It's tricky, but I just don't like it when people try it on, you know. And I feel like there's been a massive try on, and we've called it out in Australia. We've got a bit of a way to go, but you know,
We don't have that term, by the way, in the U.S. to
okay,
try
it
on.
means what would be do you know what I mean? No, what would be the equivalent?
I know what you mean, but I'm trying to translate. I don't know if
I
there's a
know
different way of
it's
saying
like
it, but
had a
it's like
crack. I don't know, that's probably
they've had
Australia.
a
Well, they've had a
yeah,
go.
they're trying to get away with it, kind of, right?
Good go,
Is the
guys. Yeah, yeah, good job. Sorry, no thanks.
right, right? That probably comes from cricket or something, right?
Oh yeah, everything comes to a sporting analogy always.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it was great to chat. Really fun,
quite
interesting.
a super interesting chat. And look, it's moving so quickly as well. That's the other thing that sentiment, deals, the tech. I will be very, very interested to see how things go.